Ailelerin özgün etkisini büyütmede sürekli yeniliğin gücünden bahsedilecek birazdan, sıradaki oturumumuzda daha doğrusu. İbn Haldun'a dayandırılan bir söz vardır, coğrafya kaderdir diye. Oylama yapılsa öyle sanıyorum ki katılan sayısıyla katılmayan sayısı birbiriyle yarışır hale gelecektir. Sıradaki oturumda bu düşünceye dair benzerlikler, bulgular olur mu? İzlemeden, dinlemeden bilemeyeceğiz tabii ki. Ben öncelikle oturum yöneticimizi davet etmek istiyorum. Oturum yöneticimiz İnci ailesi 3. nesil Light Eagle kurucusu, TAIDER üyesi Sayın Onur Eren geliyor alkışlarınızla. Ve aynı zamanda Kutsa Vakfı eş başkanı Sayın Ajay Ramachandran. Hoş geldiniz diyoruz ve sözü Sayın Oturum yöneticimize bırakıyoruz. Buyurun.
Çok teşekkür ederiz. Değerli TÜSİAD üyeleri, wow. Oturumun gerisi su gibi akıyor. Değerli TAIDER üyeleri, burada olmak çok büyük bir mutluluk. 12. Ulusal Aile İşletmeleri Zirvesi'nde olmak, hepimizin geleceğini yakından ilgilendiren bir konu için bir arada olmaktan dolayı çok mutluyuz burada. And now I'm switching to English.
Thank you.
And so we have been speaking with Ajay about how we would like to hold this session. And I would like to begin by speaking into how we came to meet. And I think it also speaks into where we are coming from, how we are informed, and our relationship. We first met in a family office conference in London Business School at the beginning of this year. There was this session around impact investing for family office principles. And in this session, the lecturer shared that if you are making an impact investment, you need to be ready to accept lower than market returns. And this creates huge energy in the room, actually. Apparently, many of the impact investors in the room at the time did not agree to that, and the whole session was hijacked with examples of how impact investing can be an excellent way of also creating a lot of financial profitability as well. And this is through this hijacking or an activist session we shared, we first met.
Right.
And a couple of months later, at another event where investors and funds, VC and private venture capital and private equity funds come together in Berlin for almost a global event called Super Venture. And in this, there is this smaller group subset of this event is called super climates. So investors and funds who are passionate about environmental impacts also come together. And in one of the gatherings in this event, I find myself standing next to Ajay, speaking to the principal of a traditional private equity principal who was managing a $9 billion US fund, and kind of grilling him almost about how he feels about maximizing financial profits rather than balancing it or prioritizing environmental and social impacts. And through that experience, we realized that we said the next time we see each other, maybe we should be actually instead of coming together ad hoc, we should have a more planned and prepared gathering together. And
That's
here we
right.
are.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. This session is going to be completed in 1 hour, regardless of the time we begin. We have a counter here, and that is going to be concluded by then. So since the timing is going to shift a little bit, but if you check your watches when we stepped in, we will be complete at the 60 minutes after that. That's a promise. And we would like to hold this, we have been really enjoying conversations together. And we thought to hold this session as a way to expand this conversation to expand the circle to invite you into this conversation as well, because many of the things we talk about are questions and things that we discuss with the purpose to understand a field more and to expand the perspective. So your participants in this would mean a lot. In that sense, please feel free to raise your hand at any point to ask a question, and we'll see. It's going to be slightly experimental in the sense that how we can weave each one of you into the conversation in this particular format. Enough about the intro, and now the main intro. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself, Ajay?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here in lovely Istanbul. It's been a lovely few days. My background, I am a G2 of a family that is investing in real estate, starting in California, but then expanding across the US and even into international markets. That's the family heritage. We celebrated our 50th year as a family business this year, and just had our celebration in Bangalore, India, just 1 month ago. So I'm quite excited that as we come into the 50th year of the family, we are now really thinking about generational planning, succession planning, what the next generation of the family will do as they come of age. My background, separate from the family business, is kind of venturing out on my own, creating my own businesses. And I think a lot of people here can probably relate to that story of being part of a family, yet feeling the pull and the need to try something on your own, to prove your own value and to make your own path. So I was fortunate enough to grow up in the Silicon Valley, where I had an opportunity at a very young age to work for Apple, and in fact that was my second job. My first job was as a lifeguard, but Apple was a much better place to be as a young man. And I was lucky enough to be in that environment where technology was really just woven into our daily lives. So I started my first company in the mid-90s, in the dot-com era, and was very lucky that company did well and got acquired, and I was only 23 at the time. So it was quite an early start, an early exit. And upon that success, I started another internet technology company that then went public in 1997 and grew to about 13,000 employees and a $7 billion market cap and just over $1 billion in revenues. So it was quite a lucky and fortuitous start to my life and my career. And I thought, wow, this is how things work. You start a company, you work hard, the company does well, it makes a lot of money. So I said, let me keep on doing this. But along the way, I started to feel like there could be or should be something more. And both in terms of how I was investing my time, which is really the most precious and valuable resource that I have, as well as the capital, and really looking at making investments in areas that could create impact for others, and ideally uplift people, uplift humanity in some way. And so in that capacity, I started to make those kinds of investments. You could call it venture impact. It was really a form of trying to create a more sustainable way of doing good, and one where innovation was at the heart of creating good. So that was kind of a big awakening for me as I went on my journey, and I'm happy to share some of the insights and lessons that I've learned along the way.
Yeah, and As far as I know, that in this journey you also have this phase where you also are part of the succession with your father as a next gen.
Yes.
Before you stepped into, dived into the world of entrepreneurship, there was a time where you kind of negotiated your way into that with your father, which I think could be interesting from next gen's
absolutely. Very early on, I realized that in order to truly break away, I needed to make some decisions on my own about what I was going to study, what I was going to do with my future. And I knew that I needed to fund and pay for that on my own, those studies, that pursuit of the future. Because if I was taking funding from the family, then it creates a sense of obligation that, like all Indian kids, that you should either be a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, or an investment banker. That's it. Only 4 careers. Actually, it only used to be 3. The investment banker is the new career. So I needed to kind of be in control of my own future, and so I decided to fund my own education, and I think it was the best decision that I made, because it freed me creatively to do whatever I wanted without feeling that sense of obligation. And at that time, it would have been very easy for me to have just gone into the family business full time, but instead I decided that I needed to try my own things and pursue my own path. And for all of the younger generation members in the audience, I think that's a valuable lesson, really, that you should carve your own path, forge your own future, figure out who you are. Then you can always come back into the family business and be involved. But first, make something of yourself and try things, take the risk. Who better to do that than the children of successful families, where you will always have the family, always have the backing when you need it, but you should, try to make things happen on your own, with your own power.
And at the time, did this receive support from your parents? Your father, how was their reaction?
It was pretty controversial that I said, I'm not going to be a doctor, I'm not doing the pre-med. These were all very controversial decisions. And instead, I wasn't quite clear exactly what I was going to do. In fact, at one point in time, I thought I was going to be a filmmaker. So I said, okay, I'm going to make movies. And that was the most controversial. I think part of that was rebelling against, the convention. And but in that pursuit, in that path, through some failure, actually, I discovered success. And I always find that such a fascinating aspect of life, is that when you try things and sometimes you fail, or it doesn't work out the way you hoped it would, maybe even for circumstances out of your control. In my case, I had wanted to be a filmmaker. I got into the Disney Screenwriting Fellowship, and I was going to go and work at Disney Studios in Los Angeles, and I was going to write films and TV shows. And in the summer leading up, this is after I've graduated from university, in the summer leading up to this, I get a telephone call saying, sorry, this program is canceled. This fellowship is canceled. And I said, why? Why is it canceled? Well, there's a writer's strike. The writers have gone on strike. No one is making any new shows, new content, so we've canceled this program. So in that moment of feeling like everything had failed, the system had failed me, I discovered that there could be an opportunity to do something else. And that moment of discovery was in finding that while I was in India in 1995, that I couldn't email my friends in the United States because access to the internet was very limited at the time. It was controlled by the government. And I thought that was quite strange, coming from California, where every student at the university had an email. It was easy to, surf the early internet. I said, we need to change this, so I helped create the first commercial internet service provider in India, and it was really born out of necessity. Being in India, having failed out of this fellowship at Disney, not knowing what's coming next, sitting in India, waiting, and not having any reason now to go back to the US, and discovering this fundamental problem. So I decided I would do something about it, and lucky enough, 13 months later, we were acquired, and suddenly I was a successful young kid, and I thought, okay, I'll retire. And so, unfortunately, retirement when you're young and all of your friends are working, and you're the only one not working, it's really boring.
Yeah.
So I went back and then decided to start another company, and then that one, luckily enough, IPO'd in 1997.
Well, I think this, I can sense the momentum moving forward towards the future as well. But this story is also being informed about what comes before that, because we are speaking about perpetual innovation. So, can you speak a little bit into what has been informing your entrepreneurial journey, looking back at the generation behind you?
Yeah, I think my entrepreneurial nature is always rooted in just an inherent optimism for the future. I'm quite hopeful that the future will continue to create benefits for humanity. I think with the news and with everything we hear every day in the news, we can become quite pessimistic, can't we? Everything seems so negative. The world is filled with problems. But if you really compare our standard of living today compared to just 50 years ago, let alone 100 years ago, or 250 years ago, this is a remarkable world we're living in, where we have access to healthcare, education, financial freedoms that just simply didn't exist just a few generations back. So we live in a great time. It can be an even greater time. It's not without its risks. Certainly existential risks are there, like climate and what that means for the future. In fact, I'll ask the audience a question about impact, because I think this is really at the heart of the innovation that I'm seeking is around impact. I guess I would ask all of you, how many of you like clean air? Showing your hands. Oh, not so many hands. How come? People want dirty air. No. So I think everyone wants clean air.
Yeah.
And how many of you would want clean air for your children? Okay, same. So this is impact at its core, right? We're trying to find ways to bring resilience, sustainability, so we can have a lovely future, and so our children and our children's children can grow up in a world that has the clean air, the clean water, that is more fair and just, where they have access to education, not just for the children of the wealthy, but for all of the children, right? So these are the impact opportunities that I think we can all unanimously agree, from any culture, any religion, any society, there's universal agreement around these themes. So that creates a lovely opportunity, I think, for humanity to unify, converge around, and to do something remarkable, to create some impact.
And this actually, in fact, is very relatable to family business members from my perspective, because I've come to arrive at impact through my relationship with my experience in family business network. So having attended so many sessions around succession, legacy, after becoming a father, I started, like, in terms of these terms, when I was next generation, they meant the family values being transferred to me, the family business and its sustainability towards future. But when I became a father, I started thinking about this is really important. At the same time, like from what you ask, are there going to be clean air for my children? Are there going to be healthy food, nutritions? In terms of environmentally, I wasn't so certain if the money or business that I was going to, whether or not I would succeed in leaving to them, would actually mean something. Were they going to be able to go to market and buy food? Was that going to look like that in 20 years? Especially my experience in pandemic was like, made me aware how fragile all these systems that we create as human are. And this is the environmental impact. In terms of social impact, I came to realize in Family Business Network that our sense of well-being, each one of us, is very dependent on other family members. Is my wife well? Is my mother well? Are my children well? Are my cousins well? Are my friends from FBN, are they well? Are we looking good? Are we doing good? If you keep expanding the circle, how far do you expand it? Because I know for a fact that if you have health issues in the family, if you have certain things that you worry in the family, that's actually like sets how happy and well you can be as well, because we are part of this system that we call family. But where does family start and where does it end? At the end of the day, like if you start expanding it, there's this 8 billion of us, a single species, seem to be quite interconnected. So unless we move also in a more socially equitable way, we find ways to do that. How do we access all these amazing innovations that you spoke into around finance, health, legal, like how do we all access this and make it a reality for all of us? Yeah, so this also has been, interestingly, in addition to the wealth and values of and business of a family, seems to be also part of the things that we receive from our previous generations and leave to next generations as well. And I know you are currently very active in impact and also making new investments. Would you speak a little bit into the current state of things and how things are moving forward? How do you see the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a lot there. I think, firstly, I'd say generationally, instilling those values is so important, and being very open, having those conversations with the family, the children, around the dinner table, I think is extremely important. And trying to also organize and codify how you as a family may make decisions and how you gain consensus around making investments, safeguarding not only the family's wealth, but also taking some risk and innovating and ideally finding new paths to creating impact. Because at the end of the day, what you believe is your core business sometimes can get disrupted very quickly. It can be disrupted because of like a pandemic, where suddenly you may have all of these apartment buildings that are fully occupied, but during a pandemic everyone leaves because they want to go to the countryside and they want to be in a more open space. And so what you think is a highly resilient business in real estate maybe suddenly becomes less resilient. Or if you were a commercial real estate investor investing in office buildings in California, as an example, everyone stayed at home. No one was going to work. And even today, many years after the pandemic, people are still working from home and not working in the office, right? So those assets can sometimes actually, what you thought was such a high value asset can become an albatross. It can become this burden that, that suddenly inverts and works against your family's interests. So being diversified, thinking about the future and innovating, creating impact becomes very important. One of the ways that we're supporting innovation around impact is through a program called the Founders Games. You can find it at foundersgames.org. And it is a global competition for innovation and impact. So this isn't about doing philanthropy. This is about investing in the most innovative founders and companies that can radically transform and address major existential threats and challenges that we face as humanity. A great example of that are bees. Those insects that fly around, bzz, bzz, bzz, bzz. They're responsible for the majority of our sustenance, one way or the other. Not only the eggs that you had this morning, or the beef that you ate at lunch, the vegetables, if you're a vegetarian, the bees are essential to our survival as humanity. And many don't know that the bees are having problems right now. Why are we seeing a systemic die-off in bee populations? Partly climate change, increase in temperature, but also new diseases that bees have never had to face before because of zoonotic problems, meaning cross-species bacteria that are now infecting beehives and bee colonies, causing them to die. Albert Einstein once famously said that if the bees go, humanity will follow within 4 years. Now, he said that when our supply chains were very local. We were producing everything locally back then. Today, what's changed? We produce things in a highly distributed basis. So our crops are no longer local. Our production is no longer local. Everything has become globalized, right? So in those kinds of supply chains, our resilience goes down. And as the bees go, we may go much faster, maybe inside of 18 months or 9 months. It's quite a frightening idea. And so we're looking at technologies that can solve these types of existential problems. So an example of that is one of the winners of the Founders Games called Bee Hero. What Bee Hero does is they have created a sensor and an AI platform that monitors the health of bee colonies and beehives. Now, it's a very simple idea, but it has profound impact. For one, they partner with the colonies, the beehive operators, who are typically mom and pop businesses. And those mom and pops use this technology in the beehives, and they take their colonies of bees to the farmers, often industrial farmers. And they offer their colonies and this technology to the farmers so that they can pollinate their crops and improve their crop yields. Now, this technology can radically improve crop yield, but also it can predict the crop yield. So now companies like Cargill or Maersk or other commodity traders, financial people, can see how much crops are going to be produced for each kind of crop in the world. And that then can help set market prices, spot prices in commodity exchanges. So a simple company like that can go from 0 to 100 million in revenue in under 5 years. So this is not the end of the story, because you can imagine this company scaling to hundreds of billions of dollars in the near future and being a $1 trillion market cap company. So when you think about impact and innovation, and you find these types of solutions that can address a fundamental existential challenge that we face, there can also be a lot of alpha, a lot of profit. And I think that's something that Onur and I became very good friends on, because we found that most investors are often thinking, oh, I can only have impact or I can only have financial gain. I cannot get both at the same time. And I think this is the fundamental opportunity that, that we see, is that impact investing can generate the best alpha, the best financial return, almost better than any other asset class, while solving a fundamental problem. And we have countless examples of this from our founders' games. Other companies that are tackling the methane problem in cattle, as an example. Most people don't know that the methane, when cows belch, when they burp, they give off a lot of greenhouse gases. CH4 is a greenhouse gas. It's 80 times more potent at warming the climate than the emissions of carbon dioxide from automobiles. So that's a big problem. And we have a lot of cows. We want to milk them and eat them. And so we may not be able to change that fundamental human behavior anytime soon. But this company has invented a feed additive that reduces that methane emission from cattle by 90%, while simultaneously increasing the milk and meat production of the cows. So every farmer says, yeah, of course, I want more milk, I want more meat, and they also get to meet their climate objectives, their ESG or SDG objectives as a cattle operator. So we look for these kinds of innovations that tackle fundamental problems and can really bend the trajectory, change the trajectory of climate, of our climate crisis.
I think these are very interesting examples, and inherently there are certain ways we hold ideas, we stick with certain ideas. That's the idea of you can either do good or you can make money, things like that. We separate things and hold them separately.
Yeah.
For some reason. It's quite habitual as well. So I've been seeing that just allowing ourselves to look with a beginner's eye, start thinking of how in new ways we can imagine things come together. Look at the root causes of the problems and pay attention to how in new ways we can dream these things to work out. I trust in our potential to solve these problems as human, because apparently everything that we are concerned about is it wasn't alien crabs doing it for us, it's us. So like we are the cause of our own problems. So I think we have the same power to do what is needed to overcome these as well. And I think that mind shifts. So as you are, like, these are investments. They are, like, in a sense, you can hold them as financial decisions or business decisions, but at the same time, each one we do out of the box and find new ways of connecting the dots. And if that becomes a success story, that has the power to inspire others to look into their business and to their investments and to their everyday decisions in new ways that
Absolutely.
Enable and empower them. So
I think you have to do that. I mean, if you're going to lean in on, being a force for good, you have to apply that in all aspects of your business and your life, and then ideally extend that into how you invest and use your financial capital to create impact, while also considering all of the other capital you have. As I think we were discussing in our roundtable earlier today, how do you use your social capital, your political capital, and use these all of these forces to create some good, to create some impact. So you do have to look at it holistically, but it starts at home. It starts in your personal decisions, and it also starts in your family and your family business decisions. So I think it's an important thought process to go through, because by being thoughtful, it also will open you up to all of these incredible opportunities to gain some resilience and sustainability in your core business. Resilience meaning the ability to defend the core business from all kinds of unseen threats, right? And of course then the ability to innovate and to look both inside the core business but also externally at adjacencies, other areas that you can invest that can create impact, but also a very strong financial return. And you should never think of those two things as either or. I think the reason that's happened is partly because of philanthropy. Philanthropy is like a bottomless well. You pour money into it every year, the money is used to do some good, but then next year you have to refill the well by pouring more money into it. And I'm not discouraging any of you from doing philanthropy, you should. But there's also this other idea of venture impact, where you can create tremendous financial gain that also is solving some existential problem for humanity. And so I think, balancing your overall strategy, if you're allocating to philanthropy, start also thinking about how you can invest in venture impact, which then becomes a sustainable activity. It's kind of a concept of effective altruism, the idea being if you can maximize your financial gain, and you can also maximize your impact together with that gain.
We have been expanding a little bit on these concepts, but we are in this room multi-generational people, and we are speaking about perpetual innovation. So my mind always goes back to the question of, if we take a step back from our own story, how is it being informed by the actions and the choices of our previous generations in our personal stories, and how the future generations are beginning to respond and find their own ways into our choices and actions.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. I was once asked by a 100-plus-year-old Chinese family that has this incredible business turning over billions of dollars a year in the food industry. And they had invented a food product, around 130 years ago. And it was a huge success. And it's led to a global food empire. And this one food product that they had created was a big innovation. And it was an accidental innovation. It was somehow made by mistake. And so when they were speaking with me, they asked me, how do we go from being a 125-year-old family to becoming a 1,000-year-old family, right? And my answer was simple, that it's perpetual innovation. The very thing that created this family's fortune was an incredible innovation. Granted, it happened 130 years back. And so when you think about that innovation and you ask yourself today, well, what have you done lately? Yeah. What's the new innovation that's going to carry you forward for the next 100 years or the next 1,000 years, right? So you can't stop innovating. And I think that innovation has to be very authentic. Mm-hmm. It has to come from the heart and the mind of the family, and there has to be high conviction around these opportunities to innovate. You have to really listen to yourselves and your family members. You have to corral the support to try these new things. Because that conviction, that commitment is essential, it's required. And so I always like to ask, families, well, what have you done lately? Because, maybe you started a great business 50 years ago or 100 years ago, but what are you doing right now to continue to innovate? And that innovation doesn't always have to be in the core business. It can be something completely new and divergent. Oftentimes that's better because it creates more resilience for the family to not be tied to a single market, a single industry, where you might be at risk of some hidden disruption that can destabilize that core business. Mm-hmm. So oftentimes innovating in a completely new field is a value. A great resource in your family is probably your next generation, mm-hmm. because they have a lot of passion and a lot of ideas. So take those ideas seriously, listen to them, encourage those ideas, help shape them and develop those ideas, because sometimes those ideas can be breakthrough, can take you to a whole new level of innovation. If I had just rested on my family's laurels in real estate, maybe we would have been an even bigger real estate business, I don't know. But I think we did quite well because of this desire to innovate outside of that core business.
I'm going to say this session is not sponsored by Next Gen community. But I think, that spirit of Next Gen and playing into your powers has been how can we keep that spirit going forward as well.
Sure.
And before we move on to our Q&A session, I would also like, because in our conversation we touched upon how we use AI in family. Yes. This was something I asked you, and I think it was very interesting, and I would love to, would you share that with the audience, like how do you use AI in the family?
Yeah, well, I have a lot of funny AI stories. I've been an AI innovator for many years. I started my first AI company in 1999. And so I've been kind of in the AI field for quite a while. Of course, a lot has changed recently in AI with the innovation around large language models and other large foundation models. And if you were at the Give Back dinner yesterday, you heard about another model that's being created by the artist who presented on stage, a large nature model. So I think there are a lot of interesting innovations that will continue in that vein, which is very exciting to see. But in a simple story around AI in my family, I've been, of course, a proponent and early adopter of all of these LLMs, including ChatGPT, and I've been encouraging my children to use these tools, to use them for homework, to use them for all of the things that the school says you should not use it for. And why? Because it's inevitable. The technology, it's like a genie that's come out of the bottle. We're not going to call the genie back and put it in the bottle and put it in the closet. The fact of the matter is the genie's out of the bottle, and we need to embrace it and learn how to make the most effective use of these technologies, but also to be responsible and have some governance to ensure that the technologies can be safely used also. So when my daughter was applying for her sixth form in the UK, some of the schools said, do not use AI on the application. And any school that said, do not use AI, I said, do not apply. Because the school had it wrong, right? The approach and the thought process was completely wrong. Instead, the school should say, use AI if you want. You don't have to, but you can. But make sure you explain how you used it and why, and how you improved upon what the AI gave you, right? Because that would be a much smarter way to inform and instruct a child in this modern age, where AI is an inevitability, right? We shouldn't be pushing them away from it. We should say, how do you use it responsibly? So a simple example, but a more radical example of AI in families. We embarked on an interesting project a few years ago it was inspired by Steve Jobs, by the way. Again, I worked at Apple all those years ago. And this inspiration was based on this idea that Steve had that someday you could talk to Aristotle. There would be a computer system that could ingest all of the works of Aristotle. And then instead of just reading the text, which is quite useful, you could actually engage in a dialogue with Aristotle and have a conversation. And that was his dream many, many years ago in the mid-'80s, way, way before any of these technologies like large language models were even a concept. And so in that capacity, I've been a big believer that eventually we'll have a singularity moment where either our consciousness or something close to it can be uploaded into a system, into AI, and the AI can represent us. It may not be exactly us, it may not truly be our soul, maybe one day even that, but probably not in the next few years. But in the next few years, we could have a pretty good approximation of Onur, of Ajay, and each of you. But we have to feed it the right training data. So for the last few years, we've been collecting a lot of data about the patriarch of our family, my father, and we've been recording interviews with him, extensive video interviews on all kinds of subjects, childhood stories to his life lessons, what shaped him, the mistakes he made, the successes he had, the challenges he faced, the decisions he made, what he thought about doing good, what he thinks about doing bad. Every kind of imaginable topic, hundreds of questions and hundreds of interviews and hours of video content. And we're feeding that into an AI and using it as the data set to train an AI. Because I want my children to be able to speak to their tata, that's grandfather in my language, and I want them to be able to speak to him 20 years from now, when they are older and going through a life challenge, whatever it might be. I want them to have access to that resource and to be able to have a dialogue with that wisdom that has guided and shepherded our family so far through all of these decades and enabled us to achieve so much success. And I can't imagine a better tribute to him than giving him the opportunity to share those stories, which for him is quite a joy to spend the time with all of us, my children, my brother, me, and sharing those stories where we're recording and capturing them. That's quite a joy for him. But also to pay that tribute where some approximation of my dad will live on in AI for decades or centuries to come. So it's a very interesting project, use of AI that I think will start transforming how we think about also our life's journeys, right? Because you can imagine even now, for all of us who have been growing up in the digital age where all of our movements are tracked on emails and calendars and in instant messages, all of this content that we've created through our lifetimes is an incredibly valuable data set that really is a proxy, an approximation of who we are. So there is, a very unusual and interesting future around the corner with AI and how we'll interact with our family in the future through AI or on AI.
Thank you. Mind-blowing. So with this, we would like to open the stage for any questions you might have. And yes, some mics will be coming your way as soon as you raise your hands. And you can keep it up in the air until you receive the mic. Thank you.
About this AI project for your family, I thought your father, so you are asking questions now, but he is responding in terms of, now. But when your child will be grown up in 20 years, do you think his response would be the same if he's going to live in 20 years, or is it going to change? Are those timeless answers or not?
Yeah, so, a lot of the wisdom, of course, is, his reflections on the past, but we're also trying to have him share those authentic stories in the moment, like when he arrived in New York City and had just a few $100s to his name, and how he spent those first hours, that first day, what did he do in that first week, that first month, and really getting into the nitty-gritty details, like of all of the things that happened in those moments in his life. And similarly, when he arrived, before immigrating to the U.S., he had actually gone to the U.K. And when he arrived in the U.K., he arrived and discovered that his original job that he had applied for was no longer available.
What a surprise.
Right, and this is in a day and age where everything's being done by letters. So the letter informing him that the job was no longer there had been sent while he is coming, to the UK. And so then what happened? What came of that next? How did he overcome that challenge? And right down to where did he even stay that first night when he arrived in London, right? There was no booking.com where you could, choose the hotel, right? He arrived there and, stumbled around the town and found a YMCA, right? So we went and visited that YMCA 2 years ago and actually conducted some interviews with him in the YMCA. Wow. Because it really helped bring back a lot of his recollection and memories of those first, hours and that first day. And what he did, he went to the YMCA and they didn't have any rooms. So he told the manager of the YMCA, he said, I don't have anywhere else to go. I'll just wait outside on the steps until tomorrow. Maybe you have a room for me tomorrow. And this is in the middle of winter. It's cold and raining in London, foggy, cold, raining. And the manager of the YMCA was so convinced about his commitment, his conviction, that he said, no, I can't have you do that. You come inside, we'll make some arrangement for you. And they did. But, so those kinds of stories, we would never have discovered that story had we not, visited that site, that location. So we've tried to do some of that also, going back to the places where he had his first job, even talking to some of his colleagues in the past and collecting those stories. So hopefully we get, a good answer from that AI saying, hey, you have to be bold, and maybe you have to take some chances. Life is not without some risk, right, and some struggle. So hopefully the AI would do a good job, with those, but we'll see. That's we're still training it. It's quite a project, quite a process to build that AI so that it's not just on the stories alone, but also trying to capture like a psychometric profile, of him, and also, to your point, addressing that longitudinally. What was your mindset, when you were 25? What was it when you were 30? What did you think about like having fun, right? Because oftentimes as a child, you see these very serious parents, don't you? These not fun parents. But it turns out that your parents were pretty fun. They had a lot of fun. Yeah. and they enjoyed those moments in life when they were younger. So, even getting those stories become very interesting.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for sharing this mind-blowing life story. I wonder, where do you see yourself in 10, 20 years? Like any new adventures coming?
Well, I probably will be in the cloud at some point. But no, to all joking aside, aside from being, an AI in the cloud, I would say in 10 to 20 years, hopefully continuing to invest in innovation, making these kinds of impacts, solving existential challenges. A challenge that we're quite concerned about right now is the protein challenge, which in the next 8 to 10 years we won't have enough protein to feed humanity. And so how do we overcome that challenge? Many people think we'll eat insects and insect-derived proteins. There are other synthetic products, molecular biology and molecular meats. So there are all sorts of interesting emerging opportunities there where, again, innovation and impact can create new businesses, new markets, and really valuable companies. So I expect I'll continue to do that, hopefully as long as my mind is sharp and I can take those risks and those bets. I think the Founders Games will hopefully continue. It's been running now for 15 years, and we'll continue to find amazing innovations and technology companies that are really investment worthy and will create a substantial return. So hopefully we get to continue to do that. And then of course more time for family. We all want that. I think AI will be a great automator that will help us have more time for our families, to be able to be more productive, do more, but also then be freer to enjoy time with family. Maybe I'll have some grandkids by then, so we'll see.
Thank you. And one last question from the gentleman.
Hello. Okay. Thank you for your experience. I think innovation is very important. Everyone will agree on that, and I think those who are actually handling family business, is really important to innovate in order to survive and to progress in the right direction. But one thing that is important is, especially in the era of AI and anything related to automation, is the question of where do we put the limit? Where is it that we put, I would say, human first? Because at the end of the day, everything that we are doing is actually for humanity, right? So when we are start doing a lot of things aligned with AI, thinking about everyone with his own kind of assistant, and assistant talking to assistant, at the end of the day, where is it that we put humanity first? So my question is, do you have any kind of insight on that part so that we can really reflect on that? Thank you.
Absolutely. Certainly governance and ethical considerations are paramount in AI systems, especially as we move towards a artificial general intelligence that approximates or exceeds human intelligence, that ideally we are able to infuse a empathy for humanity and for all living creatures in and for our planet into these AI models. So a theory of mind, but also kind of a theory of systems from a systems thinking perspective becomes paramount for these future AI models to be trained on and to have some guardrails. Because AI unchecked can be quite frightening, right? you're probably familiar with the paperclip experiment, which notionally is this idea that you ask an AI to find the most efficient way to make paper clips, and somehow in the end, part of its solution is that humans should not exist, so it can maximize paperclip production, right? And so one of those steps along the way, ends humanity, and it's just to make more paper clips. So we can't have AIs that have no guardrails. We need the guardrails to ensure that AI is working in a beneficial way. So perhaps the way to think about artificial generalized intelligence is also to say artificial beneficial intelligence, that these AI systems are working for the benefit of humankind and are trained to do so. The risks are there, that there are bad actors or bad state actors even that are using AIs to do bad things. And those risks will exist. I'm a big believer and optimist, though, that the forces of good and the good AIs will ultimately win in the AI race. That the good AI will outcompete the bad AIs, and more resources, more dollar, more compute, more energy will go towards the good AIs that are designed to benefit humanity, because the bad AIs will be limited by many constraints, fundamentally energy and financial constraints that limit the ability of those bad AIs to outcompete the good ones.
Thank you. With this, we come to our completion. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thanks for having me.
Eş Başkanı Sayın Ajay Ramachandran'a ve Light Eagle kurucusu TAIDER üyesi Sayın Onur Eren'e çok teşekkür ediyoruz. We thank Mr. Ramachandran, TAIDER, board member Aydın Buğra İlter. We will present gift in the memory of the summit. Sayın Ramachandran'a ödülünü, hediyesini takdim etmek üzere TAIDER Yönetim Kurulu üyesi Sayın Aydın Buğra İlter'i davet ediyorum sahneye.
Yeah, well done.
Hoş geldin.
Good job keeping us on pace and on track.
Ve Sayın Onur Eren'e de hediyesini takdim etmek üzere TAIDER Üyelik Geliştirme Komitesi Yönetim Kurulu temsilcimiz Sayın Meral Toraman'ı davet ediyorum. Hoş geldiniz. Buyurun lütfen. Ailelerin özgün etkisini büyütmede sürekli yeniliğin gücü üzerine gerçekleştirdiğimiz oturumumuzda hediyelerimizin takdimini yaptık. Çok teşekkür ediyoruz konuşmacılarımıza.